Mayor, we are ready.
Okay, all right. Good evening and welcome to the North Bend City Council work session for Monday, July 10th at 4:35 here in the council chambers. After calling the meeting to order this evening, we'll go ahead and begin with public comments. And the first person I have up is Ken Benetti. Ken, welcome. Come on forward. Before you begin, I'll let you know that there is if you want to take a seat, we have speakers there, and we want to make sure that we do thank everybody for participating in public comment this evening. The public comment period is an essential part of local government meetings. Each person has 3 minutes to speak. This is whether they're in person or if they're online. Our governing body takes input into consideration, and however, in observance of Oregon open meeting laws, this isn't a time for dialogue, but rather a time for us to listen to you. Our city administrator and city recorder are here taking notes of any action as needed.
Okay.
So when you are ready to begin, our city recorder will start the timer.
Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Ken Benetti. I live at 1997 Oak Street, Airport Heights. It's come to my attention that there is an effort underway to clear the brush and so forth along Pidham Loop and along the bluff on heading south on this east, east bluff, or the bluff on the east peninsula of the city, and then along, you can see it on the map. And I just came off of an 18-month campaign to save a forest in Airport Heights, controlled by the airport. They first they brush hogged it completely, and then they wanted to log it and then fence it. And the reason why I'm here is that I understand that the possibility exists that the brush hogging would be basically a complete clearing of the underbrush there. And I want to give you a cautionary message on this. That area is a wildlife habitat. It's huckleberry. It's not very fire prone. It's an area that many people hike beneath on the trail and really appreciate. There's old growth timber in there and so forth. So what I would like is that if I understand there's going to be a grant of some sort to cover the costs of this operation, I just want to say, do a selective, carefully done clearing of brush if that is needed, and make and not clear cut kind of complete brush hogging. All you have to do is take a look at what happened to the airport property after the brush hogging there. It's devastated. It'll grow back slowly, but the wildlife have been displaced completely from there, or were displaced completely. They're beginning to come back a little bit. Very disruptive. And along with the wildlife coming back, there's been an invasion of Scotch broom and French broom and other invasives that have taken advantage of the disturbed land there. And now we're engaged in an effort to pull that. We've done 2 pulls in cooperation with the airport. Is that the signal?
Yeah.
Okay, well, please do not clear cut it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Sammy, how do you pronounce your last name?
Abud.
Abud. All right, come on forward.
All right.
Okay. Same situation. When you begin speaking, our city reporter will start the timer. We've got a speaker here for those who are watching online. And
Madam Mayor,
yes,
is there not a microphone?
there is.
I'm sorry?
There is. There's a microphone there.
Okay.
There's 2.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Updated it. Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
but the microphone's more for people online, right? Not in the chambers. It doesn't project it here.
So for instance, Sammy, go ahead and say test.
Testing.
All right. I'm speaking now. I hope you can hear me because I need your voice.
Okay, so Counselor, do you see he's showing up on the screen? So
Mr.
the,
Miller, there had been a microphone previously. That's why I noticed that it's not there. I expect that something has changed, that it's a different configuration. Yes, I will go put on a hearing aid. Thank
Okay,
you very much.
I'll wait
okay.
for you.
And Counselor, for the record, the council was advised that the microphone had changed. You were at that meeting.
Oh,
And we introduced it at that meeting and said, and in fact, we commented about how wonderful it was picking up. And that it picks up even the folks on the back row. So I'm sorry that you forgot that, but please do not chastise me in the middle of a meeting.
I wasn't chastising you.
Yes, you
Okay,
were.
so we're going to go ahead and begin with public comment. Sammy, when you're
I'm
ready.
gonna wait for her to be able to hear me and then we'll go after this to discuss the matter in 3 minutes.
Mhm.
You ready? Can you hear me now? Good. I have a
Wow.
bad hearing too sometimes and I put my hearing aid. My name is Sami Aboud. I'm the owner of 1860 Union. It's a commercial building. It used to be Cafe Mediterranean for the last 21 years. Unfortunately, we have left that business last year, but to get the 3 minutes in, I'm here about the camping sign right in front of Angelina's restaurant right now. Those tenants are leasing the building from me and you guys own next door that you just purchased to do something with it later on. Hopefully it's something good for this street. The camping sign is located right in front of my door for the commercial building, which is we talking about Angelina's restaurant. No tenant would like to see that they're going into a place where somebody was sleeping in the doorway and or under the awning. As we all know, there is some problem with the homeless, not just in this state, but everywhere else. But to get the 3 minutes again, I was blindsided. I did not get information or an email or a letter to basically inform me that this is my affect me as a commercial building owner, and the city have this record of my email, my phone number for the past 21 years as I paid business license. I pay my taxes like everybody else for sure. I'm here today to please have every single one of you, please walk down the street and just take one moment and look at this restaurant and look at the sign. Is this sign in the right place? Would this sign make this business fail? Yes, it will. It's a restaurant. It have to be tip-top clean at all times. We are not having problems for the past week since July 1st until today, but I'm here from California. I drove 8 hours to come and see the city and talk about this issue because I will not be able to come in August 14 as I have another arrangement to be outside the country until September. So please take the time, walk down the street. If this is what you want to represent for a restaurant, have a camping sign in front of it, and the winter is coming, the wind is coming, the rain is coming, as long as I would think, if one of those homeless people, I'm very sorry for them, but if one of them gets hold of, they can stay there from 8 o'clock, which is the business is still open at 8 until 9 o'clock. He will not leave. We will have problems. We'll be here again on this table talking about the same thing. That's why I'm here for. So please take a moment and visit it.
Thank
and
you. Yeah.
Hopefully something good will come out of it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you so much. All right, next item of business. So we are at again, number 3 on the agenda is the Special Events Committee resolution. Let's see, and we have a draft Special Events Committee resolution. I believe Mark Wolf is online. He, after I think our last council meeting, we gave him some feedback and he put together this draft resolution for some, to see if we have any further feedback on it. So Mark, did you want to go ahead and discuss what you put together as a draft?
Sure, it's pretty straightforward. Many of the provisions were taken directly out of your current council rules. regarding lay committees. And then the city recorder and I modified some of those provisions to include some of the provisions specific to this special events committee, such as the purpose, some of the timelines, the number of members that will be on the committee. And so I don't have anything specific to point out. I'd be happy to answer any questions if the council has any.
Okay. Is there any questions from the council?
Yeah, so I have a bunch just because, you know, this is not something I'm familiar with. So from my perspective, because Main Street is really limited in particular, and that's all grant funded, we have a gap around any type of coordinated efforts to include more of our commercial properties that are outside of 101. And so to me, and cities, depending on their size, do this all different ways. The smaller the city, the more, you know, sort of directly involved the mayor is, or the, you know, the council, whatever that is. The larger the city, these kind of things seem to turn into committees about code. But so what I'm saying is, I don't know if what we've detailed in here is enough to represent a committee that is going to change as we learn and figure out how to work with Main Street, basically. And so I don't know. I don't know if it makes sense for us to codify this, or if we still have a few more ad hoc meetings or something like that.
I think Councilor Schultz has a comment or question.
Well, when I read through it, one B said that basically they have to come back within 6 months and we can either kind of change it or continue it or dissolve it. So it looks like there's ways to, like, we have to check back in. It's not going to be a consistent thing. So I thought that would kind of change, like in 6 months, if we come back and we say this isn't necessarily what we thought it would be, that would be the time to do
I
that,
love
right?
that. Yeah,
Our-
the sunset's good.
Is that what that's there for?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
was that a question to me?
Yeah, that's what 1B basically does, is basically says that it's gonna be reviewed by us, it's not gonna just exist.
Absolutely. That was and the city recorder and I put our heads together and felt like 6 months was a reasonable time, but that could easily be changed.
Okay.
And so, can I ask a
Go
clar-
ahead.
so
You bet.
to clarifying, the committee has a special purpose that's written in the resolution and would be expected then to report back to the council. And then the council would make decisions on moving forward. I mean, that's really the flow of it, right?
Yeah, so this would be a committee that would make recommendations that the full council could act on.
Okay, Councilor Nordoff?
Are we having a July Jubilee this year?
We talked about that before. I don't know if you recall, but we decided that there wasn't any specific July Jubilee events that the city would be heading up.
Okay, so when we met, Councilor Jones and yourself and me, and we learned that what you had in mind was a more expansive July Jubilee committee involving the public. Mr. Milliron sent an email out and I asked you about it and you hadn't seen it, but I forwarded it to you. Do you remember that email?
Not off the top of my head right now.
Okay, it was a 2-paragraph email and it said, be careful what you start because we don't have adequate staff time to support this and we don't have the funding to support this. And I can bring that email in before, and because it needs to also be shared with the entire council.
Councilor Schultz.
I'm pretty sure that this resolution doesn't have anything to do with staff members, it has to do with creating a separate committee, correct?
No,
There would be staff, I'm looking for
it's
that.
public, it's a public. meeting,
There would
so
be
it's not
staff,
exactly open.
No staff on it. So the council
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, well, it says 5,
Now what this is?
maximum of 9, minimum of 5, it'd be 2 city councilors
It's-
maximum.
I'm in the wrong one.
It'll be right there.
There we go.
But it seems like it's just a committee that's getting together, so until they start making potential decisions
Right.
that they're bringing to us, then it would be affecting our
Yes,
staff, but until we make a decision about where they go, it would not affect our staff.
Correct.
Yeah, so number 3, the special events committee shall consist of a maximum of 9, a minimum of 5 committee members. The special events committee may be comprised of at-large community members of the city and city councilors. However, a maximum of 2 sitting councilors may be on the special events committee. And so I think the questions that you have, Councilor Nordoff, are discussions of that committee, not about,
Well, so. I mean, we could turn this into just conversation amongst ourselves, but there's still overhead for staff. It's a public meeting, all that has to be, appropriately communicated and organized and reported. We will have questions, we'll have, we would like to, see Main Street's master calendar, for example.
Well,
There will be some questions, you know what I mean? So I think it's. Maybe on the surface to us, it's like it's an hour here, an hour there, but there will still be some staff time for this.
sure.
And so that's kind of what I'm sort of curious. I think it's needed. I think we need something because the Main Street program, which is our main source, is really limited in its location. It's grant money. They have a really specific area that they can do things on, and we don't have an arm to include or leverage those for the rest of the commercial district in particular. But I can't tell if this code is enough so that there's, some sort of appropriate way to manage these interactions that we have, that we will want to have with Main Street or with other staffers about, you know what I mean? This isn't, we're making a new thing.
Wondering if I'm hearing your concerns are how much strain of this would be on the staff? Is that what you're concerned about?
Yes.
Okay. And I mean,
And how we're allowed to collaborate
Mhm.
with, as a council, how are we allowed to collaborate with a non-council thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? How are we're usually restricted in our communication, we have to funnel it through the administrator, which is fine. But when it comes to this committee work, we're gonna be very interested in what the Main Street Board is gonna do for December, or, maybe the first thing that we do is we say, Main Street is having something December 15th, and these are the 3 things they know they're gonna have. We don't have any budget for that. Perhaps the committee members will personally visit the commercial district outside of that and say, hey, we don't have any funding for this part, but if you want to juxtapose something on this event that's happening, as a way to communicate out, that could be the first thing we do. But that seems, there's still stuff in there.
Okay, Councilor Gall has a.
Well, I just kind of go back to the meeting there a month ago when we were, almost sitting here under pressure to get a council committee together, what scares me about this whole thing is this what 1, 2, 3, 4 whereas, and I know Jessica likes saying whereas.
Oh, I do.
The purpose of the special events committee is to explore special events across the calendar year in the spirit of July Jubilee. I think we're talking about 2 different things. I think we're talking about having a July Jubilee committee and then stretching it out, which I've been against the whole time, stretching it out across the calendar year. So you don't know what we end up doing if we were gonna do that. I know you're not gonna pull a July Jubilee off worth a darn in 20 days. I get that, but we need to know what we're talking about here. If we're talking about, having, so many events that I can see where it would strain the budget, our budget strained to the max now.
Yeah, no.
But, or are we talking about July Jubilee? That's that whereas there, I don't like that whereas.
So I think part of it is this committee could help us figure that out. So again, I think they would come back to us, and whatever they come back with, we could say no to. And so I think you're worried about potentially what the cost would be, but part of it is creating this committee. And so they would kind of potentially create what they think is happening. And so the community members would say, you know what, we don't just want July, or they might say we just want July. And so this committee would create that potentially and kind of get it back up and running, potentially to say, these are the things we're thinking about. Could we incorporate it with the Main Street, or could we celebrate it with these things that we're already potentially doing. So it's not gonna be, what I see it as is not us creating more. I mean, everything costs money, but potentially it could just be them getting together and telling us, this is what we found out. 'Cause sometimes I don't know what's going on with the things that are happening in North Bend. And so this committee could be those people that come back to us and say, this is what we've heard about, this is what we've talked with other people about, this is what's happening. So I think that's what this committee would do, is that if we created it, they would come to us and say, this is what we would like to do, or this is in the spirit of what we used to do, this is what we would like to do, and then we get to decide, like, yes, we want to put money towards this, or no, we don't.
Well, yeah, and I don't want to hang up on the money part, but, you know, I do know that, I was part of the very first July Jubilee, and it really meant something. But if you're gonna stretch it out over a year and have all these different events, I think you're gonna lose the thought of what July Jubilee was supposed to be. You know, and it's gonna take some historians, it's gonna take some, you know, that committee, not to badmouth Councilor Jones, but she was on the last July Jubilee committee and probably doesn't know the whole history of the July Jubilee, and not saying new blood isn't what we need, but we need some old blood. Just to, we've lost it, you know, we've lost a July Jubilee because of COVID, B, because, you know, we've had other major issues to deal with. I think it's going to take somebody special to bring the July Jubilee back. But if you try to stretch it out over a year, we're just spinning our wheels.
So two things. One, I think I just heard you volunteer to be on the committee
I just hear that.
to keep it in July.
And
But I think I really want to make sure that we're all on the same page about the purpose. So the special events committee purpose is to provide recommendations to the city council to review and consider options for future celebrations and how to sustain and approve upon the July Jubilee celebration. And I think we have had conversations over the last goal setting session this time and even the 2 years prior where it did come up. It's time to look at it again. That doesn't mean necessarily taking it away, but like that's going to be part of this group. That's the kind of work that needs to be done in committee. It can't be done as a council sitting here at the diocese.
Yeah, well, so, and that's kind of where, you know, in private organizations or businesses, I'm very accustomed to teams where we're creating something new. But that seems to not fit into council, you know, council, we're the top. So that anything going on in the city, people can come to us. You know, we're the ones that adjudicate. I think of this not really as July Jubilee. I think that's our example of a big series of celebrations that were citywide that we call July Jubilee, but I think of this as a special events committee where the city is driving the program. How, you know, maybe, you know, businesses figure out how they want to participate, but it's special events that the city has put a name to, not it's only July Jubilee. That's the example we have as something that people are remembering. You know, the community enjoyed, or there's lots of benefit out of it, but you know, I think this is expanding upon that. That's an example, but this is expanding.
I just want to be sitting here this time in May and not have
Yes.
same thing we're having this year. Like, we don't have nothing going on this year. I got asked today about the car cruise. Is July Jubilee happening? We're doing a car cruise, but nobody's heard nothing. So I'd rather see something than not see anything.
Counselor Jones, is there so the point of this discussion is to review this draft committee resolution before we go to a vote. Is there
Yeah.
something that you would want in the language to, like, is there questions or suggestions about the language? Because this would be the time that we would give that back to our attorney and see if there was anything that you feel like if something's missing from this to protect the concerns that you have, this is where this would go.
Right, well, it's unanswerable for me because I don't know how committees work. To preserve both the fact that the council is the top of the city, you know, like if the Supreme Court, if our Supreme Court decided, which they probably could, to have a big parade and dedicate $10 million of their budget to have something in the name of their three favorite groups, they could probably do it. I don't think, and there would be no way for somebody to say that's not a good way to spend that money.
Are there
That's their
examples of
top.
committees that have happened, like that have been created recently that?
Well, we have, what are our council committees? We have fire committee, no, just parks committee.
Which hasn't met.
Yeah.
They haven't had a
The
task.
thing is, it hasn't happened.
It
so
hasn't happened.
Lake Great Parks Committee.
So, and there hasn't been a task needed to give to the
Yeah,
Parks
so this
Committee,
is-
so that's why. So number 11 on here says recommendations from the Special Events Committee shall be provided to the city council within 60 to 90 days from its creation. So there would be a check back within, probably sooner. And then the city council may authorize by simple motion an extension of up to 60 days. And so there is a time stamp on this to have that committee come back and report to this group.
So does this give us enough bandwidth so that we are able to collaborate with Main Street, or is that?
Are you gonna
We're
be part of the
not allowed?
committee? Are you gonna be part of the committee? Cause I think that's the thing, is that we're giving it to somebody else to collect that and do that, and so they'll bring it back to us and report on
So
it.
are you asking that, would this committee be able to have other stakeholders in the community meet with them? Is that the question?
Sure. What isn't clear to me is how we, keep the distributed power necessary so that we can be council and do our thing and still be able to do this experiment where we're trying to figure out how to leverage this
Yeah.
grant money that we have in Main Street to include other businesses.
So
Is this
the
inclusive?
So, Madam
decision
Mayor.
are the recommendations. The
Yeah.
Committee's making only making recommendations to this governing body.
Give it a rumble. It's got a sunset.
So nothing that you want to add to it right now.
No, I mean, I just don't know enough about.
Okay.
How this stuff works, but that's okay. We have a sunset on it. That's
Yeah.
the most important thing. I mean,
And-
unless somebody can say, oh, you have a sunset on it, but there's these three things in here that might.
Yeah,
Make
that's
it
one
look
you got
nice.
there, number 7, I think, so.
Which is removal all members of student. Yeah. Mr. Wolf, at this point, it does not sound like I'm hearing any additional suggestions to the draft resolution. Okay,
Yeah, I tend to agree. Thank you.
okay. Well, that would take us to number 4, which is your work. Your number 4 is the smoking regulations ordinance discussion. And there is a discussion on the creation of the ordinance regulating smoking in city parks and around city facilities. We have information on page 4. Is this back to the attorney or to you, Mr. Miller?
This is a discussion of the smoking regulations ordinance. The council asked staff to draft one after you heard from an individual from Coos Health and Wellness. We have put in some additional information on our parks. Right now, we actually already have signage on all of our playgrounds and all of our parks regarding smoking. We provided to the council. It was said that Coos Bay has one. Coos Bay, in fact, does have one. They've given out one ticket because they deemed it pretty much unenforceable. It's on the honor system. They have signage there. They said that one ticket was actually given for a larger purpose so that they could utilize that to ban someone from their parks. You can certainly read their report. It was emailed to you. Very much like some of the complaints we got on fireworks, which I shared with the council this morning. If a law enforcement officer doesn't see it, it's unenforceable. They can't ticket. There's nothing that you can do. Staff's not going to go in and tell folks you can't smoke. That's not their authority. It's not their power. They do not enforce ordinances. In your city code, it is your law enforcement code enforcement that enforce it. So we can certainly move forward with an ordinance, but we'll give you the same guidance that was given to the Coos Bay City Council. there is a lack of resources to actually be able to enforce it. And that comes from a discussion that I had with our police chief. And that's just the reality. When you are in a city that's got 2 to 3 officers at max in the city at any given time, and they are prioritizing calls, the likelihood that a call that someone's smoking in a park is going to divert is very unlikely. Moreover, when you have an ordinance, this came up before this council about 4 years ago. The same discussion from the minutes was had, and the same conclusion was, you know, folks are on the honor system. We have the signage there. We hope that they'll do the right thing and not smoke around the children. So really, it's ultimately the will of the council. Steph's here and can certainly answer any questions that you have.
Counselor Schultz?
I really appreciated that you included the Coos Bay information and then also how the Coos Bay, their meeting went. I thought it was really interesting to think about the fact that, again, just thinking about what their process, I think help me think about, again, what it would take and why we would be doing it potentially. And I just don't see the point of spending money to make new signs.
Counselor Gall?
But it is signed, right?
It is currently signed. In fact, I verified that this
The
morning.
sign, you know, instead of having to think that a cop's gonna respond on everybody smoking, but another citizen might mention, hey, there's no smoking here.
Yeah.
You're gonna get more enforcement by that, you know, maybe some old school hockey stuff or something. But anyway, I think if it's signed, that's the key.
Yeah, I verified with our Parks and Superintendent this morning that all of our playgrounds are signed. It's very much like a question that came up last year with a counselor saying, you know, do we allow motorized vehicles in the parks or on? It's notified out there. It is signed. It states such. You're on the honor system.
Does our sign say no smoking or no smoking within so many feet of a person, or what?
It's no smoking in that in any of our playground areas.
So there's also the dog one, though, and the dogs one.
Well, there's also says that you should have no dogs off leash, but you pass Boynton Park and on the weekend, it's the unofficial dog park.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we could go there and round up all the dogs and cite everyone.
So that's what I think about too, with in relation kind of, it's again, the honor system where you just hope the sign is enough.
Yep.
Well, I mean, most is like that, right? I mean, that's traffic laws.
Well, except that you can get ticketed. You can get ticketed.
But the majority don't.
It's out, you know, out here.
And the reason we had started with this discussion is we had somebody come in and gave a presentation about and I think their original concern was smoking downtown, right? Out down in the business district.
I think that there was an email that was sent to you, Madam Mayor, and I think that they passed like an establishment. Those establishments are all under state law, if I'm not mistaken, and
10 foot or whatever, yeah.
exactly. And so if they're in violation again, and a complaint, you know, yes, we could go and investigate. But our conversation via the council then evolved over into our parks. So.
So at this point, we would move forward with, there's still no smoking in parks. It's just not necessarily a city ordinance violation.
You can make it a violation, and we may be in the same boat as Coos Bay. After the same time has elapsed, we'll be here in 4 years and we can ask whether or not we had a ticket issued. You physically have to either see them, target them, stake out the parks. You know, again, we come back to resources. We are at a critical resource issue. You're going to hear that over and over when the departments start coming before you. Putting it in the words, it's not just us, putting it in the words of one of our county commissioners in a public meeting. We are at a dire situation regarding our budget. And their law enforcement, police, their sheriff's department is looking at potentially the next budget. If something doesn't give or take, I believe that they may even consider another run at a levy. They used ARPA funds to hand out and shore up some of the raises, and that you're at the end of the road come December 31st with those funds. So again, it's really the will of the council, but I just like to set the expectation that unless you want that to be a priority, fine, we simply just pull resources off of other priorities. And right now, that priority is homelessness.
And I don't want to do that.
Sounds like what we're hearing from the council is the signs that say no smoking, please, are enough right now.
And then Pat's gonna come and be like,
All right, number 5 is the tiny home discussion.
I apologize. This actually would have gone out to you ahead of time, but we ran out of ink in the printer, and so they had to come get some. But I'm going to give you 2 handouts. One, because what I'm hearing from the council is that we need to have our Main Street manager, when she comes back, meet with the council and do some presentations, because what I heard today doesn't fall in line with the contract and agreement or the purpose of the Main Street program and how it functions. And I want to make sure that we get that clarified before we get anybody thinking otherwise. And so we'll work on that as soon as she shows some availability. But that said, because I printed all of this, otherwise it would have been in the mailboxes. And so part of the huge initiative at the state level right now is all about housing, homelessness. Folks are homeless because we have affordable housing issue. We have an affordable housing issue because of the markets. And so we, as a governing body, had declared specific properties as surplus for the purpose of housing. And so we've been working on those initiatives. The city, North Bend, Coos Bay, and the county has been working on the homeless initiatives. And so we know that our visitor center will be relocated downtown. And that is one of the properties that is on the surplus list. And at the time was discussed about potential housing future. Also during the homeless discussion, it had come up about potentially could you turn areas around Pittem Loop into, say, RV parking. And that obviously wasn't a conversation supported by staff, but certainly one that we addressed. What you have in front of you are 4 photos. Each one of those is a 500 square foot residence. I show you each of these because every single one of them comes with a single car garage. And in looking at the visitor information center, when that is demolished, that gives a potential opportunity to basically create a small home little environment there with a centralized courtyard, and everybody has off-street parking because they're parking and living above. Also, there's the potential, and there's always covenants with all property. And so along Pittem Loop, the first at the visitor center is in the URA. When you look at the Pittem Loop, potentially the city could have minimal impact of developing along Pittem Loop 500 square foot small homes. These homes would address your affordable housing issue in the city, because each one of these would be somewhere between the cost of $7,000 to $9,000 a piece to have built. They actually are rather affordable to have constructed. Staff doesn't want to go down a path of trying to leverage URA funds and then matching it with state funds for the non-URA on potentially building out a concept plan if it doesn't fall within the council sort of vision. There's not a lot of space over there. the reason that this concept interests us is because you can actually get a family of two plus a child in each of those. So you could actually get three. In fact, some of the designs actually show 2 adults, 2 children. But once those children get a certain age, it's not going to really work, in my opinion. But I'm not a family of children, so I don't know. But it is pretty enclosed. It would not affect any nearby property values, meaning because it's far enough away, so it doesn't actually affect home values. Each of them would be rentals if the URA or a third-party entity under contract did the property management for us. We could sell them. The downside of selling them is they're no longer affordable homes. What happens is they fall like any other property. This would be one of those sort of pilot projects that, because we've already surplused the area at the visitor center, that it would be sort of a courtyard of small, tiny homes. They don't have to look all the same, although they could. Certainly can do the cost where basically you just put in a small courtyard of those. And then I believe that if it works and works very efficiently, we then can look to the next step of our housing implementation plan of authorizing these as ADUs throughout the community as just that, accessory dwelling units on homes where they could actually have a tiny home concept and could be supported. Right now, it's allowed and authorized.
What does ADU mean?
Accessory dwelling unit. So you can basically build one of these in your backyard if you interconnect with your existing utilities, and it's authorized under our code. The state regulates once it gets above a certain size. So here in Oregon, which heavily regulates, they are referred as small homes, not tiny homes. I put it on the agenda because that's what everyone understands them by, but these are small homes. So we do have a group in the timber industry. I'll just throw out some names without actually identifying them, but let's say that, you know, you had the Acme, you know, timber company, and they manufacture all types of wood products. We do have one group that's interested in trying to help the city with housing if it can. And so a tiny home like this, the city has the ability to purchase the actual plans, and then you could have Habitat for Humanity, for instance, build one. You could have the Rotary build one, or you can just have a contractor, a GC, come in and build all of them. And so these are all Oregon specific so that they meet Oregon code. So it's really part of opening the discussion for moving forward, because with the governor's initiative on housing and addressing the availability of affordable housing, there are going to be a lot of funding opportunities coming down the pike. There's one immediate that we're working on for some initiatives, not here in the city, but as part of our House Bill 4123 pilot, focusing on houselessness. But the second tranche and others could benefit us here on the coast, where otherwise we would not be able to entertain moving forward on such a initiative.
How many, so when we look at the property you're talking about, how many of these is there space for?
So Ralph, the question is, has your team been able to
Approximately.
engage approximately yet anything, or are you still way too early on that?
Definitely way too early, but there's about 1,000 feet of roadway. I mean, you could figure 40 feet on center.
That's 5 for every 200, so. On an average, I'm not saying.
That's okay, get low ball at 1 or 4.
I mean, theoretically, if you wanted to, you could bid. 25.
Yeah.
Wow.
25.
Counselor Gall
That's-
had, and I saw his
that's
hand
on
ready to go up
what-
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a question, Counselor Gall?
Yeah, I mean. I think, not to badmouth our city administrator, but I think his $7,000 quote's a little low. But I can see where you could build one of these fairly reasonable. Getting utilities and all that to our property is a whole nother thing, so. And then I don't know, what would you, just the ballpark, what would you throw out as, what would the rent on that be?
The rents on these could be between $650 to $800 a
Okay,
month.
so not cheap.
These
I
aren't,
mean,
these
still-
aren't like,
Yeah,
That was the
pallet
next question I had.
shelters.
Yeah.
These are
Yes.
meant for what they call like middle incomes.
Yes,
Your-
yes.
you know,
You know,
I keep
work-
going back to
yes.
the thought that nobody ever made my house payment for me, but.
And nobody,
I can see where
yeah,
this might be, you know, and I like the Pittman Loop deal a lot more than I'd like Simpson Park, but yeah, I mean, you could 25 on Pittman Loop, I could see that.
could you show us on could we pull up a map? I'm trying to visualize it.
Yeah, Mason,
There.
can you pull up the
Um,
map?
Is it, what is the, maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves too, but like, how do you go through the process of figuring out who would be qualified to, you know, like, what would the process be of being able to get into a rental like this?
Yeah, so you basically do a third party engagement, say like, you know, NeighborWorks Umpqua, for instance, who already manages property in the city. And so they then have the ability to manage. There are other professional management companies that manage rentals. If the rents made sense and justified it, you would hire a city staff member who would do building maintenance paid for by the rents, which then could utilize that person for you know, park maintenance as well. There are a lot of ways and initiatives. For instance, instead of a park host, we could identify one of the 25 as a resident manager. It's not unusual, for instance, to in private apartment complexes or condo associations where they will offer that up to a police officer. The reason is because the police officer is present there when not duty, and then they have certain enforcement opportunities. So there's lots of mechanisms, if you will, to achieve the ultimate goal.
And it's for professionals, like it's meant,
This is so this is not low income housing. This is what's called middle income housing.
yeah,
What you're seeing on an international trend is that folks don't want that 30-year mortgage. They won't want the, you know, 2,500 square foot home. They want something that's simple, that is affordable to them, because they much rather spend their money traveling and doing other things or hopping jobs.
Councilor
But-
Marks, did I see your hand start to go up?
I'm in agreement with Councilor Gall that I would not be in favor of anything happening at Simpson Park except new picnic shelters and new restaurants. And better parking lot configuration. There's basically, since the complex was basically taken down, a new park spot was built. We're hurting for picnic shelters and the restaurant's pretty old. And I do not want to impact that park. It was at one time proposed as an arboretum, and it's a lovely, lovely spot. And
I want to make sure we're talking about the same
so,
area.
yes, so as far as the tiny houses, I think we need to remember that the North Bend Housing Authority is building 5 new apartment buildings over where the school was.
Apartments.
And I'm not in favor of anything around Pittman Loop. It's the last undisturbed area as far as I know, in the city of North Bend.
Now, I want to ask a question about this map here. So when we say Pittem Loop, so I'm looking at the way, it's right to the left of 101. Is that are people camping in there right now? Is that?
They're on the far back end, yes. Once the underbrush is cleared out some of there, it'll expose. We've done cleanups in there.
Yeah, okay.
So yes, we've had homeless in there. And I certainly respect and appreciate the counselor's comments. But if you don't increase your tax base, which this would do, you're not going to have any tax increment moving forward. We're at 140,000 just for this next year. And I have already indicated to you where we are with some of the collective bargaining agreement conversations. And so you have to look at, preserving, but at the same time, looking at opportunities. And so if this is not the opportunity, then maybe another somewhere. But you've got a land issue.
All right, I think we'll start with Counselor Schultz, then Gall, and then have somebody from this side.
Would we not,
Back to
would we not decide to do this unless we get funding from, the state?
So the park portion is in the urban renewal, and so we can do that under urban renewal.
Okay.
And then that would then allow them to go on. We would then match that dollar for dollar in a grant application for the Pittem Loop, because as the one counselor said, yes, we have utilities that go across, but we have to interconnect and get them there. So there will be expense. So yes, you'll always look to go after those state dollars in order to further all forms of housing. And then Councilor Nordoff is correct. There are going to be low income with zero tax benefit to the city on the former Bangor School, for which we will provide services for. And so that addresses one element of our housing crisis. But as you saw in your housing implementation study, you have to do multiple across the spectrum. And so again, if this is not the area or the ideal, no problem. We'll continue to look, but you do not have land. That's our biggest issue. If we did, we would have resolved your camping issue real simply.
Yeah, okay, so there's a few more hands. Before we go back to the side, did Counselor Jones?
You said I was.
Okay, Counselor. Let's try and get you fair. Everyone's supposed to speak before we go back to the other.
Comment on the tax base. So if we own them and we rent them, is that on the tax base?
So when you have a commercial purpose of the actual building on the land, you then convert to a commercial entity for that particular property, not the whole Parker thing, but yes. And so you then it's very much like doing a payment in lieu of taxes. And so your residual income that you have coming in can take that all into
So
account.
it's really not on the tax base. It's kind of.
It can
But it's
be,
revenue to the city.
yes, it can be if it's done in a commercial entity.
But just like any other government building that's owned in North Bend, it's not on the tax.
Yeah, I'll give you a case in point. For instance, let's say out at the airport, there is the industrial park at the airport, and back there is it the UPS or the FedEx?
UPS.
Okay, UPS. So that's a commercial use. And so there's a portion of that is then commercially taxable because it is a commercial use on otherwise private property. Did I answer all that right?
Wow.
Basically, if you're generating an income. Could they on their parking lot, they'll lease their parking lots. That lease income is a taxable entity. Even though it's public property. As an example, that's that lease income, that leasehold interest is a taxable.
So if we have to pay taxes on them, we'll probably be going south rather than just keeping the whole.
So you got Colorado.
It's been an evaluation.
Yeah.
Is Colorado Loop out of the question? The area you're talking, down by UPS?
That's-
That's not our property. Yeah, that's airport property.
Hey, I keep getting to this.
Counselor Jones, did you have a?
Federal law.
So, yeah, I guess the conundrum, I think, for us is really that, and we don't think of it this way, but the new sales, the new property turnover is what revitalizes your tax base, because everybody's tax rates are frozen. And so, we have to get innovative around that because we don't have any land, we don't have enough turnover. And we have these regulations just on North Bend where, we can only raise our fees to the Social Security cost of living, but of course, the city doesn't buy anything that a person buys, So when our equipment costs go up 30% for the sewer or the fire or anything we need to keep up, that little tiny segment that we're allowed to increase doesn't cover it. And so we need to think of new things like this. So I like the idea. That's not a question and you asked me like.
Thank you very much. Fair to everybody in the Senate before I went back, because Counselor Nordoff has her hand up again.
Yes. At my request, when we were looking at homeless camping areas, we took a tour of city-owned property. And Ralph Dunham, our public works director, led that tour, and there's property owned by the city on the north side of Newmark. It was not good for homeless camping. There's no sidewalk on the north side of Newmark. I think someone would eventually have gotten killed there, but I would suggest that type of property, the city-owned properties that are adjacent to residential areas that could be kind of shielded, other properties could kind of be shielded, but you would be dealing with a rezone of park property in Pittem Loop. You would be encroaching on the park use of Simpson Park, were you to locate it there. If you build these, you will be paying system development charges to the water utility. And you're going to have a rezone battle up at Pittem Loop. So I would suggest that you look at the property that the city already owns that is not in the parks for an idea such as this. Plus, I think that we should wait until the Coos County Annex gets redeveloped and don't start battles in 5 different areas or 2 or 3, these projects. Let's focus on one and get it done so that we can then move forward with something else.
But I don't think that's our luxury. We can't force the annex monies to come to us any sooner than we're going to come to us. To me, the strategic stuff is we are literally trying to start 3 or 4 fires and need at least a couple of them to grow. So I would disagree that we can even.
Counselor Schultz has her hand up.
Well, and I think that we're talking about two different things also at the same time, and it's all around housing, which is really important. And again, I do think we all agree that we need housing. And so for me, as somebody who was a renter, as a single person who was a renter for years, and what percentage I could survive on with my rent, it was not here. And so this price looks amazing to me as somebody who just thinks about like a single person even being able to afford, like there's nothing under $1,000. Like it's very hard to find a place to rent now. And again, I think that's kind of the argument. And I don't think today we're picking a place, right? You're just introducing us to this idea. And if we're interested in looking at it, right? Is that what's happening?
Yeah.
So I would say that it is interesting and I would want to continue on this path.
I'm hearing Counselor Nordoff has some concerns about a park location. I do feel like that's very underutilized right now. So I would be willing to explore that, but we're so new in looking at this that there would be probably several other explorations before any final decisions would be made. And I like what you said, Counselor Jones, about like, you can't wait until one thing is done.
Yeah.
That's not how economic development works. And that's not what you do when you're in the middle of a housing crisis. As if a smart man once told me, if you don't have nothing and you don't do anything in 5 years, you don't have nothing too. So you got to keep things going.
At this level, we have to start 3 or 4 different.
Things.
Especially for this, because there's such a long tail.
And, I'm sure there's other designs and stuff that will come down, but one of the things that is really appealing to me, there's something to be said about a home. that would not be filled with the apartment complex. And it's a different group. This is middle income. We're looking at where people would be, nobody's paying their rents, right? It's like they would be paying their own rents. There'd probably be a qualifying process. I don't know, I'm guessing. But this isn't, I think probably people need to understand, nobody's putting low income into.
This isn't subsidized housing. This is.
Well, I don't know yet. I don't, probably not. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and the other thing I like about this particular design, which could help if it is if we did choose kind of a park like saying, I like the fact that there's a garage on here.
And that's the
and-
same footprint. That's, to me, that's the magic. You've got, you can put your car in,
So
and
the-
you have your living space, and it's in the same relatively small.
I lived in
Yeah,
a community in California where these are probably about 500 to 600 square feet. Is that-
Every single one you're looking at is no more than 500 square
500.
feet.
So then in LA, there was a community and they were maybe twice as big. So they're about 1,000 square feet, but they were called patio homes. And so you didn't really have much of a big backyard. You just had kind of a patio, but you had to park in your garage.
Mhm.
You can put regulations, so it's not like it's taking up streets
Mhm.
space and all that too. So it sounds like what I'm hearing from the council is like, bring some more information back, right? Like,
Yes,
let's look
yes.
into it and let's,
Yes.
Yeah,
look at several
just
locations.
guessing what that visitor information center looks like, I'd say, you know, a cul-de-sac design or something.
Yeah.
We probably still could get 8 in there or something like that, maybe 10. And that might, we just kind of threw out that 25 deal, that might be over what we need, if we got started, then we look at other pieces of property, and if this works, I might retire in one.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
concept is really powerful because if we look at, distribution of wealth for here and elsewhere, just within our community, the older people have more resources than the people coming in. We're not just, 18-year-old, but 20, 30, 40, including into our 50s. And this is something that represents truly affordable in a beautiful place. Whereas if we built them and sold them, they would immediately become unaffordable to everybody again. So I feel like for us in a coastal community, this layer, which is weird, right? The government is going to be owning the land and, this process, that's weird, but this is to me, the only thing I've ever heard of that we could possibly make housing for the professional level of people that we are bringing here or that are growing up here.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
think this is incredibly
Okay.
powerful.
I say, bring us back
I
some
think
further information on it.
Good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if I may, and so, yes, I deliberately only brought you concept plans with a garage
Mhm.
because they're tiny, small homes. If you have a footprint plus a car or something, using, sort of Ray Kroc's idea of McDonald's, if you own the land, you control what's on it.
Yes.
And so in the conversations that the mayor and I had when we were going to bat for the congressionally designated funds for the annex, the question came up over and over and over. And that was, how are you going to guarantee that these remain middle income and affordable housing?
Mhm.
Not low income. That's not what we're doing at the annex. And my feeble mind always had the answer that I still believe to be true. There's enabling legislation in Oregon that no local government has exercised, which is the land bank. And the land bank allows an independent authority to actually manage your lands. So the land bank removes all liability from the local government.
Oh, terrific.
They can then, from the revenue, operate and maintain your facilities and the properties. And then through your intergovernmental agreement, all increment above that is then a direct revenue stream back into one of two things: your local government or additional housing. That's really what you set out And so it allows folks to give properties to land banks. It allows land banks to go after condemned or otherwise foreclosed properties or tax sales and then redevelop them without the liability back onto the municipal government. So that was my answer. And so far it apparently has worked because we're still in line with potentially $4 million. And so we should know, you know, we're eyeing that federal budget and the appropriations process, but we're the only local government that made both lists and are moving forward
With all three.
with the request.
Representatives and the two senators, yeah.
So again, yes, we have multiple irons in the fire. There's a lot of irons in the fire because it takes 3 to 5 years for economic development to turn. The URA, folks always wonder and ask, why are we investing in private property? Because they have to file a building permit, which resets the value of the reassessed increment value, while at the same time removing blight and increasing the value of the property and the aesthetics of your downtown. That's why you have a Main Street program. Your downtown main streets are your economic engines for communities. Cities are supposed to be the economic engines for your counties. That's why it all works in tandem, if you will. And so I appreciate it. We'll put together, you know, a high-level concept plan, and then we'll continue the conversation for the benefit of those listening at home. No decisions have been made. Still scratching and sniffing, but we didn't want to go down the path of having staff resources draw up things. And lastly, to answer the counselors, yes, you're absolutely right. When we went on those tours, there was a property on Newmark. And so when we actually, not y'all have changed, meaning not physically, the board has changed. But when we surplus the property, we had identified a potential use for every one of those. That property on Newmark is an apartment complex, is that we believe is the highest best use for that property. And so will the site take work? Every site that the city, if we own prima the land, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So everything is going to be sort of a bit of work to accomplish housing on what little land we do have, but we have to maximize it. And lastly, I'll end with the question that comes up all the time, because they keep looking at the tent property.
At the what?
At the tent property.
Yeah.
Who's
That is owned by the Urban Renewal Agency, and I'll remind yet again that long-term, that is designated for housing, unless the URA changes that vision and plan. But I also knew that large picture, we had to get to the point where we could put money into the budget, but we had to solve the pool. We then had to solve the library. We're finally to the point of trying to focus on the community building. And so there is $1 million in the budget towards the renovation of that property. Ralph in Public Works is working with me and doing research because we're looking at, does it make sense to renovate or demolish and put a steel structure in there that would basically be the same cost for that footprint? We don't have the answer yet. Meanwhile, we have started the process of seeking private and then other grant opportunities that could potentially then augment the $1 million, because the estimate on that property, I believe, was 1.8. Yes, to actually renovate, and that didn't include the kitchen, as I recall. And we're working on a private initiative on the kitchen with another facility that'll be demolished and trying to do a tax letter as a donation. So there's a lot of things going. So why did I mention the tent? Because when we do take that property off market, that is the affordable, low-cost rental in our community, and we don't have any. And so now you'll understand why I've always mentioned that the tent will be there for about 3 years for that location. That because the side lot will be the laydown lot for the renovation demolition of the annex. So there'll be multiple things happening simultaneously. You know, very much like we're doing the RFP on the we're about to do the visitor information, while at the same time, we'll be working on the RFP to get the tortilla factory going, while all of these other, you know, it's like Wizard of Oz, if you will, turning all the dials to try to keep things moving in line with the council goals and the vision. So as councils change, there's always catch up. And that's what I realized with some of the questions on the Main Street is we've got to address some of the catch up. And we're not talking Heinz. So thank you.
All right, so looking forward to hearing more about that in the future. And number 6 is consideration of a ballot measure for a sanitary sewer fee increase. Page 9, I see our Public Works Director come in.
His face is glowing. He's got a big smile. He's excited to have this discussion with you.
Just favorite top.
Yeah. The sewer. Tell us about the sewer.
Mayor, members of City Council, the reason I'm bringing this forward to you is this was goal number 2B on your council goals. And even though November seems like a long time off, the November is coming up very soon. Should we have a ballot title? If we should choose to do so, the ballot title has to be filed by August 18th. And by September 7th, explanatory statement for the November election. So we have this council meeting, the next council meeting, and the first council meeting in August to make that decision whether you want to go forth. So timing here, although not fully prepared to tell you what or do recommendations specific to dollars and cents, I wanted to bring it forth to you and introduce you. So I wanted to walk you through the sanitary sewer system. Our original plant, wastewater treatment plant, was built in 1954. It was upgraded in 1971, upgraded again in 1991. So it lasted about 27 years before it was upgraded. And the original plant was primary, and I don't want to get too much into that, but we did better treatment with each upgrade. 71 was a secondary treatment plant upgrade, and in 91 was secondary treatment, but fully meeting all the secondary treatment standards. So there's a picture of our treatment plant. In 1988, we also upgraded our 3 largest pump stations, with 3 of the 4 largest. In 91 and 88, we disconnected. We used to be a combined sewer system, which means the stormwater flowed into the plant also. So part of that upgrade, we removed the stormwater from the treatment system, and now we're fully treating all the wastewater that enters the city. And it just shows the treatment plant is upgraded in 91. 99, we used to put biosolids on the airport. 2004, we upgraded our blowers. This is just kind of a timeline, and I'll walk through it real quick. 2005, we purchased the wastewater treatment plant property because we've given that entire property to the airport district. We purchased it back because we were paying fairly high rental rate. Put in dechlorination, which you chlorinate, dechlorinate. Did some structural relocation. 2015, purchased our sludge site. We used to put sludge in the county forest, and on that site, leased it from Weyerhaeuser. We purchased it in 2015 to get a guaranteed sludge disposal site. 16, 18, again, we converted from chlorine gas, which is very hazardous to hypochlorite, which is not nice, but much better, much less hazardous to the citizenry and the users. This is a picture of our biosolid site. You can see our biosolid site. I'm just running the cursor, everything from the road and basically along this line out is our Christensen Ranch property. The nice green grass areas here. This was a field we upgraded 2 years ago, and this is where we actually applied biosolids, where you see the less green areas. That's not where we applied biosolids. Nitrogen makes your grass nice and green. So this is what it looked like before we replanted it. I mean, we leveled graded to get better drainage. It actually, in looking at this, you can kind of see this salt marsh mess here. That's what this area looked like prior to it looking like this, and now it's. I'm just kind of walking you through the sanitary sewer system here. Some problems we have with our collection system, connected illegal connections, leaking pipes, leaking drains, roots getting into the system, that type of thing. I kind of threw this together. So our collection system, we have a little over 260,000 feet, which is 51 miles of mainline sewer in the ground. This doesn't, and we've got another 10,000 of pressure lines, but that doesn't count our service laterals either. I wanted to give you some idea how much is older than 70 years old. 40% of our system is older than 65 years old. The life of the system is design life's 50. It usually lasts to about 70. It can be, if well maintained, beyond 70, you're pretty much at risk. Our average life of our entire system, you had new sewer go in the last couple weeks, is 61 years. Forgive me, I put 62 years in here, and Joe gave me an updated list, and so it's only 61 years. We replaced more than I knew. Yeah, but so we do maintenance on it. We TV about 50,000 feet a year. We clean 75,000 feet. Closed circuit video inspection. We're basically required by DEQ to look at our entire system once every 7 years or 6 years.
6.
So we have to inventory and look at that system under our permit. So closed circuit video inspection. There's a picture in here a little later that shows you. We bait them for rats. We look at this is our combination sewer cleaner with that jet rotter today. I think what we got was 630,000 to replace it. That's a 11-year-old piece of equipment. We'll probably be looking at replacing it in the next couple of years. There's a TV van. Replacement cost of about 200,000, but it's in pretty good condition. It's not, the jet rotor is kind of high wear, kind of like a street sweeper. There's a closed circuit video inspection. You can see a crack in the pipe at the top.
It's like a colonoscopy.
There's no rat.
No rat, and you can see them in there. There's none of them peeking. Here's one that was fixed. That's what we call cured in place pipe. And I'll get into our lift stations. Our lift stations are in pretty good condition. We've been upgrading those. Started in '88, fairly working with the 3 of them, but wastewater staff have stayed on our lift stations. We have one very old one that we need to fix. But beyond pump station 4, which is part of our EPA grant, we have the money to fix it. Beyond pump station 4, basically we're looking at replacing pumps and controls. The structures themselves and the rest of the system in the lift stations is in good condition. And so the lift stations, I'm not going to pick on and say, boy, we need a lot more money for them. But remember, the pumps alone, 2 of the 5 pumps for pump station 5, we replaced last year. It was $132,000 just for those pumps, not installed, just those pumps. So everything costs money. This is pump station 7, which was reconstruction 2017 at about 430,000. This is pump station 4, which we have to replace. You can see the back wall's rotted, and that pipe is actually in worse shape than the back wall, isn't it, Mike? We are hoping to keep it together till it's replaced, because we've been delayed a little bit in replacing it. Partially has to do with grant conditions. We're trying to meet those, so else we'd have bid it this year and be under construction, but that's pump station 5, which again, the upgrading the main pumps, the electrical, and replacing the piping for those pumps last year was 259,000. Structure relocation project. This is looking over the plant. There used to be more structures on the east side of this, storage and that type of thing. So our wastewater treatment plant, our flows are pretty much stabilized through the combination of our collection system improvements, and people using low flow showers and stuff, converting. Our plant's designed for a 13,000 people population. The projections for the plant have been pretty good. It was a 20-year design standard. We've hit the peak hydraulic flow once. I can't remember if that was 2006 or which was a 70-year storm event. The peak hydraulic standard is supposed to be for a 10-year storm. So we met all that. We're at 10.6 now. We're starting to get up there towards our 13,000 population, but everything as far as treatment units in the system, as far as sizing and meeting current standards, is in pretty good condition. We do have, again, I started out by saying the original plant was built in 54, upgraded in 71. That was 27 years. It was upgraded again in 1991. That was 20 years. We're 32 years since its last upgrade. So that a lot of those had to do with increasing our treatment capacity and system. So it wasn't that things were worn out and had to be replaced every 20 years. I'm just saying we do have equipment which has an average life of 20 years. That's 32 years old. We've been replacing that. You've seen the pumps come through. You've seen the hydro gritter, not the hydro gritter, our grit screw, various pieces of equipment come through, but it's all getting pretty aged for the most part now.
Did you have a question, Councilor Jones, or did you want to let him ask?
So I could be misinterpreting. So what I'm hearing is that the overall capacity and the sort of the nodes that make up the overall capacity is what we need it to be, but that the parts are getting way outside of their intended usable use.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Again, just some projects that has been done. So our collection system. Our collection system is kind of a key element here. The pump stations, we'll get into the financials here in a little bit. The pump stations probably in capital outlay $150,000 a year in expense. We're not talking about a brand new combination sewer cleaner, but our treatment plant probably on an average over the next 5 years, I would expect we've been doing about 250,000. That'll be fairly consistent. The bomb is our collection system, which we just said was 61 years old. Our average age is 61 years old. 40% of it is over 65 years old.
And by collection, you mean?
That's the pipe in the ground underneath the street.
When you flush your toilet, it goes into the collection system. So that'll help you.
It collects it
Or at least
to
we hope it
either
does.
and conveys it to either the treatment plant or a pump station, which then conveys it to the treatment plant. Currently in our budget, we have scheduled replacements in the next 2 years, or in our current budget, 2.7 million. We've got about $1 million in the lift station. In our annual income, our current sewer rates bring in just a touch over $2 million a year. We have an EPA grant, which is funding 1.35 million, so that's a bump in the road, but this is just what the treatment plant needs in the next 5 years. Again, we have a 1971 secondary clarifier, which has a sweep and mechanical arms, which was rebuilt, but it'll have to be replaced probably in the next 5 years. And main blower, we've gone through those on an average of about 20 years. It's 25 years old or 20 years old. And there's some stuff in the headworks, which is 32 years old, that we're gonna have to go through. A little more about closed circuit and lining sewers. So here's our estimated replacement costs of our existing system. Our treatment plant, and Coos Bay just replaced their plant too, and it was a little over 20 million. And it's a little smaller than ours, so I actually inflated these numbers from looking at these in the early 2000s, and that they came out pretty close. Our sewer lines, we're looking at about 35 million, lift stations, a little over 5 million, portable equipment, 1.5 million. And so you're looking at a total replacement value of $64 million. That you're depreciating.
Ralph. One observation is this is the same figure that it would cost to repair all of our roads, by the way. But two salient points. So this is our infrastructure. And so one thing that comes up, which was again an act of a previous council, is because I just happen to know that the envelopes recently went out in the mailings, is the council authorized marketing to our private businesses and homeowners insurance on their lateral lines that connect to our infrastructure, because those laterals, in most cases, those homes were built 50+ years ago. And so the cost just on the homeowner for a collapse of that infrastructure, because it has exceeded the age. So if you ever hear like, why do I have the city logo on something? It was authorized by the council. Nobody here makes any money. And it's insurance that is blessed by the League of Oregon Cities and the National League of Cities. The second salient point to all of this is we as staff have aggressively tried to go after federal funding to offset this cost. Your federal and state delegation has said no. And the reason they said no is because they said your clients, sewer customers, do not have enough grit in the game. The rates are too low, that you are asking us to basically gift you, not help you. They're literally saying gift you, because, and I don't want to say you all, but the governing body has, and the word that the federal delegation has used, artificially low sewer rates. I always question the word when they always say artificially low, because it's like, it ain't artificial anything. They are low. We know they're low. Ralph knows they're low. We've done studies, and Ralph has come, not during my tenure, but has come before the governing bodies in the past. And then there was an authorization. And so I only say that because the first question that always comes up is, wasn't there grants available for this? We go after everything that we physically can. But every time we go after congressionally designated funding, so like you hear, for instance, like Lakeside and Powers got very large, that's because they're paying higher rates than us. And the taxpayers, they realize that they are paying almost as much a capacity as they can. And so the federal government comes in and assessed. And so, but we're not there yet, nor are we even close.
Yeah, I don't know what Powers rates are. Lakeside's around $75 a month. So we're at 35. We're at 35.
Yeah, you're gonna start talking about rates, Rob?
Either that or we're gonna take a bio break. So
Okay, real quickly then.
To use our lateral system, or
So our projected revenue right now for the year, 2.1 million in revenue, 1.3 our EPA grants, that's 3.4 million. Our projected expenses, we're spending $1 million a year in personnel services, materials and services, which is our chemical, our general data, our power bill, our day-to-day maintenance is another $1 million. So remember, our revenue is 2.1. And without doing any capital outlay at all, we got $100,000 a year for capital outlay. And our projected capital outlay for this year is 2.9 million. Do the math, and the EPA
it's not
grants
64
one time.
million.
So what I gave you in your packet was the history of our sewer use rate increases. And our biggest problem since 2003, lately we're doing great, don't get me wrong. We had a big gap, we fell behind. That's the honest to gosh truth. I mean, 2003 to 2014, if you look historically, about every 4 years to 5 years, we raised 20%, so about 4% a year. Other than a big, when we had to do our last upgrade, you'll see a 20% a year. That was to pre-fund the major upgrade on the treatment system. That's what happens when we let stuff get behind,
Yeah.
because all of a sudden we've got to catch up. And that's the reason I highlighted that. I gave you a chart in there that just basically shows the age of the system. And I'm going to get out of this, but on the drive, I'm going to show you our collection system. Our collection system is really driving this. So I'm going to zoom out the pink, bright pink color there. This was our inventory. It's a little hard to see. I'll zoom back in, but this was an inventory. You'll see three kind of major colors, kind of a blue, green, the pink, and then a yellow color. And I'm going to zoom back in. This was produced in 2013, date on the maps 2014, but 13, as everything that was in color, the pink's been replaced. Just so you're aware, that's what we've already replaced. Everything that's been color except for yellow. Yellow designates, you'll see a little bit up in Simpson Heights. And then you'll see a bunch that's out in the marsh, areas that we can't video inspect. We don't know what conditions it's in.
That's fantastic.
But we have replaced part of it. It wasn't in very good condition.
Mhm.
And if you don't know, that means the last time you looked was 20 years out, 30 years out.
Well, this map was generated in 2013. Yes, that actually this stuff in Pony Slough was put in 1961. I think this was a little later, and up in Simpson Heights was 73, 74. When you see all this color, after we've replaced close to 10,000 feet in the last 10 years. We've done better recently. We're replacing about 1,500. Well, since 2020, we replaced 5,400 feet. That's part of the reason you see a bunch of bills being spent. But what you see in color here was kind of this is areas we know we have problems. That's not areas.
You said
And out of that, that's 50,000 feet.
Which ones are the problem
the
areas?
pink, is it the
The
pink?
pink is what's been replaced. That's brand new
Those are the
in
big.
the last 10 years. That's the good stuff.
So where's the bad problems?
The other colors, the yellow is unknown,
Okay,
mostly blue. You'll see it's kind of a blue-green, all of this.
They're all problems.
That is where we know we have problems.
No.
okay.
There's 50,000 feet of that left off of this map.
So I'm gonna go ahead and take just a 4.5 minute recess, since Counselor Gall is already going, I gotta go, it's this conversation. 3.5 minutes, 4.5 minutes,
I'm
and then
fine
we
with
can, okay, since he's already going, let's take advantage of this now.
Hey, Ralph, zoom out.
Out.
Yeah.
What is it?
Go south.
8-5.
Okay.
Mr. Gunn, can you post this so that we can review it and minutes? Yeah.
Absolutely. This is a presentation at this point. If we have to go forward, if council, yeah, I better stop. Yeah.
We hear, come back from the recess. Welcome. Brass tacks. What are we looking at here?
Brass tacks on that map and looking at the colors. What's shown here in blue and what I also want to show you. We took the easy stuff. Here's Virginia. We did work on Broadway. Here's Virginia State Highway. Here's Sheridan Avenue State Highway. Here's a segment of Highway 101, Tremont. Here's Newmark. Here's Newmark. Here's Broadway. I'm not picking on it. We took the off streets, which is cheaper, that we're fixing. We have sitting in front of us the main streets to deal with, which go from about, we've been replacing in-house sewer line, and I'm talking mainline footage. We also replace the laterals, but our cost has been about $250 a lineal foot to replace a main line. Through our own staff, we're averaging paying on a contractual service, replacing them around close to $400 a foot. So we take the easier stuff. Don't get me wrong. We take the shallower and so when we're not that much cheaper than the contractor because he's getting the deeper stuff and the higher traffic control. But we're still looking in 50,000 feet. This was identified in 2013 that has problems. That wasn't identified in 2023. This is what was identified in 2013. So you're sitting there with over 50,000 feet of sewer. Even at $300 a foot, that's $15 million worth of work that we know has a problem.
Mhm.
We know we have the liability for. As I noted, it's getting down to the brass tacks. All this is to do is ask you if you want to, not today, but make it a priority to get on the November ballot
Because
this November.
to move that forward, there would have to be some, like, if we came to a consensus tonight, like, you
Yeah.
probably want to move that forward, then you would come back to us with rates of.
We
per
have
thousand?
to draft, very much like we did with the pool levy. We have to draft all of the legislation, do the notifications, everything necessary, and in order to get on the November agenda. This is what I told Ralph this afternoon. Ralph, regardless of what the council decision, it's not if, it's when, meaning the easy step is for the governing body to go ahead and say, let's go ahead, put this before the people. The reality is this. When the system starts to collapse, that's when DEQ steps in. When it is large scale, the small stuff, spillage, things like that, you don't want to have them, but you get fined. And so, but once you start having large scales in a city, they can then get to the point of taking the upper hand and dictating and mandating what you shall and will do. And so, you know, how long out will that be? Well, I don't really want to throw the die here and question, you know, how far out it'll be before we start having catastrophic failures. I just pray that I'm not here. Meaning, like, I have been in a government where the state environmental protection came in and mandated and dictated.
What, and they really come in and say, well, guess what? Here's your new sewer rates. And then
Yeah.
that's just what it is.
That's
Yes,
interesting.
and yes,
Great people on.
yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't get pretty.
yeah.
Ralph may be able to give you an example or two of somewhere else in the state, but I've seen, in fact, Ralph knows. I thought that I could go to the DEQ and negotiate out something that happened, not on my watch, but it happened, I think, shortly after I got here. I was quickly put in my place. And said, you can appeal whatever you want.
Yeah.
But this is what you're going to pay. And so I went back to Ralph real quick and I said, okay, kind of a little different here, but yeah, let's write that check real fast.
Mhm.
And so that's what we did.
It's a
And
great example for people. The idea that, you know, our cost of living shouldn't increase more than our pension increases, like, that's a great idea, but this is a great example of how the costs for you to enjoy your life
Your toilet.
your toilet are way higher
Mhm.
than the costs you're going to incur when you're simply plugging into those systems and buying stuff.
Well, I guess that part of the question here tonight is, do we want to have this to where we're not voting on the presidency at the same time? I'd say yes. So I'd say this next election is the time to have it. Not saying that there's more people that vote during a presidential election, but there is. And not saying that there'll be more people vote no during, you know, it's gonna take a lot of well-written language on the
Yes.
voters pamphlet and all that.
Yes.
And can I jump in here too? Because
Do it.
I was thinking about this, that, you know, because tonight is just a discussion. But I would be curious, in the attorney and Mr. Miller can jump in if I'm wrong here. We know that before it's filed, before it go on the ballot, our public works director can share information. They're not campaigning. It's just, they're putting the facts out.
Yeah.
But once it is filed, they have to be very careful what they say.
We can-
The council and the mayor can go on an informational tour. And again, you're not telling people how to vote one or another, but providing this information. Before the council says, am I willing to put something on the ballot? I'm curious, are those things, you know, you don't have to answer tonight, but think about that. Like, you know, if we're gonna go out there and tell the, you know, the staff, put this on the ballot for the voters to decide, is there a level of commitment from this body that they would help share facts and information?
Yes.
Because that's the only way that this is so complicated. I don't even think people would believe the numbers. They don't believe the
Yes.
numbers on the roads.
Yes.
And so there would need to be Rotary meetings and town halls maybe, and things that the staff would not be able to do.
Right.
And so I'm wondering, you know, is, you know,
Yes, I will.
you will,
Yes.
yeah, and Councilor Nordoff and Gall, he
Yes,
could get
I
on the face tube. And
They do.
some people,
Remember, I actually bought signs to get the pool supported. so-
yeah, so, you know, so
I can-
that's.
I can see a
Yeah.
picture of a toilet on a
And-
sign coming up.
Because there's a way of doing that, of again, presenting people with information, not, you know, the voters will choose what they want to choose. But I think getting out the information about how, and also what can happen in catastrophic failures. Like this is, to me, it would be irresponsible of us not to try to address the issue and have it on the ballots, because this is,
I feel like just as a person, or we all, like I should have some ideas of, you know, not just that DEQ will take over and then our rates will go up even more, but things like when you start having these kinds of failures, here are the kinds of really disgusting things that are really hard to manage after they happen. Like, I feel like I should know some of those bad things, besides imagining,
yeah.
you know.
Well,
So-
it's both cost. You know, once you're behind the eight ball, it costs more to. It costs more money. I can give you an example of a failure that happened in Coos Bay, and this isn't picking on them. But rumor has it, I haven't heard the final number, but if you noticed what used to be on 101, the new Morgan Veterinary Clinic used to be a
King's
buffet
Table.
restaurant, King's Table. They replaced 300 feet of sewer there. Does anybody want to guess what that cost?
$16 million.
I heard a number one.
Well, I heard Knife River made their goal that it was gonna be over $1 million for 300 feet.
Wow.
It happened to be in the middle of the highway. Also, they had to put what they call CDF fill, which is concrete fill back in it. They had 24-hour,
24/7.
24/7 flaggers,
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
and they were working 24/7. So shut down one of them for a week.
I don't want to be the highest grade in Oregon, so.
Yeah.
We are looking in, I'll kind of wrap this up real quickly. I'm gonna ask you to have a rate study approved.
Yes.
That will give us some real numbers. I think we're looking in a rate where we should be in a rate somewhere between $45 and $50 a month on a flat rate residential average, which is a significant increase. We may be able to stagger that over multiple years, not necessarily jump it all at once, but that's part of what our rate study will look at.
Increase.
Coos County's average is a little over $70 a month for sewer alone.
Coos County's average resident pays $70 for sewer.
Yes,
And our
Coos
citizens.
Bay's is Myrtle Point. I give you the senior citizen with the $5 senior citizen discount is $58. Winchester Bay's 75, Reedsport's 72.
Wow.
Bandon's 70 something. Coquille's in the 70s.
So Madam Mayor, in fact, I think you took a screenshot of it. Remember when we compared during the budget committee process, our overall taxes compared to all the other jurisdictions and how low we were? Well, this is no different.
Yeah.
It's why we don't have the money for the roads. It's
Yeah.
why we don't have the money for sanitary sewer. It's why and again, do not think that we're struggling. The benefit is we're certainly, good stewards of the money because we're not saddled with a lot of the debt that some of these other governments are, because that would really exasperate things. We do not make ends meet. That's the reality. And so,
Well, it sounds
so
like.
I sort of hear the consensus
Yeah.
here. So we'll come back with the rate study. I think we probably can do administratively under professional services.
I have it on before council tomorrow.
Okay, so we'll move forward with that. Once we get that, and then we'll start to generate paperwork
Mhm.
in tandem.
Water Earth, yes.
And then from there, ultimately, we'll march towards the council, ultimately making a decision. So you can chew on it for a while and certainly,
And again, the decision is just that we would be saying, put it on the ballot.
yes, take it
That's
to
the
the
decision.
voters.
And, but at that time, that is an August something deadline, right?
August 18th
Yeah,
is for the ballot title and September 7th is for the explanatory statement. And after September 7th was our understanding, staff basically has to go silent.
Yep.
Mhm.
How long does the rate study take?
One of the reasons, and we'll go ahead and handle it, and then when you get into the
Yeah.
agenda, we'll forget it, we'll already talked about it.
Yeah.
This particular consultant does utility studies all the time, and they've developed a really nice piece of software. Which you can play with, rate, has all the background information, but if you want to say, what happened if we raised it 8% today?
Yes.
All right, next year, we're gonna raise it 8%. We want to spread it over 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, boom. It does a really good job of presenting stuff if you
Yeah.
needed to have some presentation
Yeah,
exhibits. But they also, in talking to them, Mike, Jeff and I listened to them. They said they could get our data, which I have a lot of the background data, like how much sewer line we have, the age and that type of thing. In 2 to 3 weeks, could get it in the system and get it back to us. So not only are they less than the last time we had a rate study done, they are timely, and the software did a really good presentation. So then you won't have to hear it later on the agenda.
if the council ends up choosing for this to go on the ballot, then before staff has to remain silent, this would be a very good talk of the town,
Yes.
Yes.
mini town hall or whatever to.
Yeah, what's your
answer.
talk of the town schedule? What's your month?
January.
So,
Yeah, you're gonna be moving that up.
yeah, August.
It was
Even August.
January of 23.
Oh,
Yeah, okay, so do you have everything that you need for the council? Because, yeah. So we can move to
Review.
look forward to hearing more on that.
What's our storm sewer like?
Well, we have a master plan going on right now. We have some issues. We only have about 28 miles of storm sewer. We have 51 miles of
Yeah,
sanitary. Because we don't know what we got. We're looking pretty right now, but it's we know there's some problems.
no.
We have to go.
Yeah,
through
we're
our
on tomorrow night, July 11th, Tuesday. Mr. Milliron, want to walk us through the agenda?
all right, Madam Mayor and Council. The first is your approval of the minutes from the June 28th, 2023 meeting. If there's any corrections, amplifications, corrections, this would be a nice time to let staff know. All right, hearing none, you have your acknowledgement of the bills from June 2023. Yeah, you'll see the authorization of public assembly and temporary use. So this is the Mid-Coast Mustang and Ford Club. And so simply put, apparently in past years, no applications or paperwork was ever filed. And so apparently a car show occurred last year, but it was the week that I was on vacation. And so I didn't know a car show over here. So imagine when a citizen came up and the mayor and I were there, they're like, hey, you're having this car show. And the mayor and I looked at each other like, huh, what? So I called Mark Matchak and he called me right back and said, apparently we are having one. And so we got paperwork, and so is not to stand in their way. Staff has already done the due diligence. We've gone, we've engaged, we've talked to them about streets, what have to be open. But it's a requirement that to actually happen, it's got to go before the council because of the way that ordinance is written. But here nor there, if you all don't pass it, then we'll just call Mark and tell him he's not having a car show. So any questions on that? Okay, good.
Can we get it sooner next time?
Normally we would, but literally the mayor and I just found out about this, and so we moved as fast as we could because it was within the last 2 weeks. That's how fast we had to move.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll do better now that we know. The next is our fire chief. This is the underbrush removal on the west side of Highway 101. You heard one gentleman come in and speak. I'm going to guess that was at the encouragement of one of our council members who posted this morning on this topic. But before the chief goes, well, actually, you can decide. Macy's got a video shot, so you can actually show them what you're talking about.
Are you asking the chief or?
The chief.
Okay.
Let me run through this and
Okay.
then I'll cue her in. I'm kind of ready. This is the one.
What's
Maybe
the
it's-
answer?
No,
What's the secret
no,
signal?
That's the one.
Action.
So I'll try to be shorter than our public works director. In time, I'm not going to be shorter than that, but so we did receive a grant from the state fire marshal's office for $250,000. And the specific verbiage they use is this grant is awarded dollars for defensible space and available to protect people, property, and communities from wildland fires through the community risk reduction program. So what we're able to do is we're able to go in and find areas where we've traditionally had fires, where there's structures there that are in danger, and we're able to mitigate those issues. So we went back and we took a look, and actually within the Pittman Loop area, we had 10 fires in there last year alone. Most of those kept pretty small being 5 or 6 feet around. Some of them got quite large down over the bank a little bit. There were some encampments there, and we were able to get into those luckily as well. But if those things take off in there, we're going to have our hands full for quite a while in there. And so we spoke with there's a local risk reduction specialist, the state fire marshal's office. And I confronted with him and talked with him. We showed him kind of what we're looking at because we had some fires in there, and he was very supportive of that. He said that would fit right into the requirements of the grant. And so this grant itself, we'll kind of give it, because we're going to be coming back to this grant in the future. So this grant is a 3-year term grant actually, and it expires in May 31st of 2026. And so it's a one-time allocation of funds. So they gave us the money already. It's in our budget. There's $250,000 in our fire prevention public education. And so it is able to be carried through for the 3 years, and we have reporting responsibilities as well for that 3 years. So we actually went out and got some quotes so we could have a look just what we're looking at. And we got requested 3 quotes. One came in, as you'll see there, at $17,750 to mitigate these issues. The other one came in at over $41,000 for the same area. And then the last person said, I don't want to even bid this right now. So it's a very unique thing, and it kind of unfortunately gave us a little bit of a black eye when the people went over to the airport, and the people that did that, they kind of rented a machine and went in there, and I will say it didn't look very professional what they had done. And I reviewed this company that we're looking at, this Outer Limits, and they have very good reputation. What they did was very, very professional. You don't see any gouges out of trees. You see protection of the species. And I think that's very important as well.
Point at me for a second, Brandon. You're gonna, okay, I'm just gonna dovetail on what Jim has already said. 6, 7, maybe close to 10 years ago, the train was going down through there and started numerous fires. And I actually took our water truck from the yard down there and helped North Bend Fire for hours. And there was people in Simpson Heights ecstatic that we were all down there because that thing could have jumped 101 so easy and got into Simpson Heights. And then what the heck we would have had then?
Yeah.
A mess. So I'm totally in favor of what you got going here.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
Let's let him finish his presentation.
so, another thing that I really noticed when we were doing this is we're looking at going from the walking path, we're keeping away from 101 there. And I know I have family members that aren't real comfortable walking on that walking path that goes along Pittem Loop because it's really overgrown in there a lot. By getting that brush back from there, I think it's going to increase the safety of people walking with kids in there as well and really help out in that situation. What we're going to do as well, that's kind of phase one, is to get it taken care of. Phase two of this program is to maintain that. And so our intention on maintaining it is, last week, we actually had Cat deliver a skid steer out there, which is a little tractor with rubber tires that won't do too much damage. And they have a brush cutter on there, not the one that is the one that rips and tears like what they had up there before. It actually takes care of the brush and does that. So we actually brought out our street department, our parks department, and our sewer department, and had them drive this thing around, because what we did is we didn't maintain back behind McPherson when they did that back in there. And so what our intention is then to get a skid steer with a brush cutter on it and then maintain what is done. So it maintains that and keeps it intact that way. And I think that's a two-pronged approach that's really going to work. We discussed that with our mitigation specialist in the state fire marshal's office, and he thought that was an exceptional idea. The stuff actually got within there. Literally, it was taller than I was, and that was only 2 years in there, and it took over, and that's adding to that issue a lot in there. So, yeah.
What was the difference between the proposal at 41,000 and the proposal at 17? It was over the same area?
Yes, the exact same
And
area.
how many acres is this?
The one is about a 3 acre, the stuff from the walking path out to Pittem Loop Road itself, that's a 3 acre, we'll call that phase one.
Sure.
And then the other one is roughly about the same acreage on that as well, from what I understand when they did a walk. It's kind of tough to get exact acreage on that.
So.
But the second one was more expensive. It's not something that he normally does. And so
something of what?
that he normally does, Patrick Myers, isn't something that he does. He falls trees and he does that, but he said he wanted to at least do what he could to help out. And
Was it the similar type of equipment being used?
it would be that he would have to rent that equipment,
Okay,
and then he would have crews, and his crews every day cost him more money for that, but it would be similar equipment.
as I understand it, that area doesn't have invasives. It has, your full-grown berries, your loganberries and salal, huckleberry, lots of ferns. And I was through there yesterday, walking pretty much all the trails along the west side of Pittem Loop. And I did not see, I saw a piece of cardboard laid under a tree. That's all I saw in terms of homeless encampment. So, and that shrubbery is it's over 6 feet tall. And so the idea is that you're gonna take out the shrubbery, the understory completely, including the 4-inch diameter and smaller trees.
Mhm.
And are you going to keep it low so it never comes back? Is that in maintenance, it's gonna be like a field? Is that the plan?
The plan is to go back in there with the machinery that we're getting in phase two and keep it down to a manageable in there as well. I do understand there's some huckleberries that may end up growing up. And I know there was a gentleman that came in the other day, Steve Skinner, and he came in and he spoke with me, and it was about another subject that he was talking about, but he went out there and looked at it. And he came back in right before the meeting tonight. And he said, the plan we've got is a real solid plan in place. He noticed the invasives that were in there is the European ivy. And that has really taken over a lot. People have went in there and tried to actually do curdling of the trees where they go in and they kill the ivy off, but it's such thick brush in there. People just can't get in there to do that. My thought is once we actually get some of that underbrush taken out, people are going to see that and be willing to step in and get rid of some of that ivy. He also mentioned that he did see holly in there, and then he saw some I'm sorry, and then some blackberries, which are all invasive as well in there. So. But it was nice for him to give the insight and little input on that as
We'll
well.
pause here for just a second to see if any other counselors have
Yep.
questions.
It's almost, so, so if you can, I think you've done well, but just to reiterate it. So airport, the airport property that got rototilled, basically, where there's huge trees that are broken and dirt everywhere, nothing's really. And then all the invasives are gonna grow. That's not the plan for this.
Absolutely not.
And so to reiterate, because to make sure that everyone knows, that was not a city project and it wasn't on city land. So it had nothing to do with us.
Yep.
And it's not our level of quality. So
So 2 years is what it took behind the tennis courts over here. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I was just looking, because did Counselor Hamilton, did you have a question?
What I would say about it was, is that might distract somebody here from crossing that area, because that's a hectic area, and it might, you know, be more inviting to tourists to actually pull over and stop, because right now it's so rushy. I mean, you look at it, that's it.
If you, I envision driving around there and being able to look out and see the bay out there,
Mhm.
see the bridges, and really, I think it's going to enhance visually quite a lot in there.
Did everybody get to speak? Counselor Schultz, did you have a comment or question?
No, I just think it's nice that we know that there was 10 fires there, and so again, that is an area that in our town is where they're most, like, a lot of fires are in fires.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
And-
it makes me worry.
And my comment before I go to Counselor Nordoff, so the grant is for 3 years. And it sounds like in a minute, we're gonna get to see the machinery then that we would own from the grant, so that this continued work would
Yeah.
happen and be able to. So
Yeah.
I definitely want to see that in a second. Did you have another comment, Counselor Nordoff?
This is the nicest, most undisturbed climax understory community that we have in the city. It's wildlife cover for lots and lots of different species of animals. And I was up there yesterday. It's a lovely, lovely hike through the trails. It's beautiful. And I hate to see it cut down when the premise for cutting it down is homeless camps. I didn't see them. I helped clean up the big one that was there.
Let me
And
ask,
I
I think it's
mostly down. along
question
the
is
road.
wildfires is the original.
Whoa,
grant, right?
I wrote the grant. Okay, let's clarify this right now. It was not because of homeless, and that's not the premise. The premise is that the council had set a goal for invasives. The fact that we've been having fires, which is why we're buying 2 rapid attack vehicles that can not only do rescue, but also are 4-wheel drive, so they can get off road because our tankers can't. And that we have a mechanism for making sure we maintain, because with 3 folks in parks, they can't keep it up. And last but not least was all of these bridge fires that I've been seeing in the news where, and so it was written into the grant. And so I worked with the fire chief one-on-one. We worked in tandem, but I wrote the grant and it was not homeless. Are there homeless over there? Yes. I'm sorry you didn't encounter them yesterday when you're walking through or whenever. But if you go a little further over the cliff, they're there. And right now, because we have gone in there painstakingly and we've been doing enforcement per our ordinance, we have been cleaning up. And so this grant is not homeless. This is about preventing fires and disaster in our community of what has occurred in other communities, so that we don't have a situation, because it has gotten so overgrown. So thank you, but no, homeless is not part of this grant.
I didn't say it was.
Actually, you did, but let's go ahead and move on.
so
We'll be pulling this off the consent calendar.
That's fine. Pull it off the consent calendar. Does any of the other counselors have any questions about this?
I don't see if we can see the video.
Yes, let's see the
Yep.
video.
and before I say this, I'll give you a little, I'm not giving you, yeah. Is because you look, that was 2 years is what you're going to be seeing some of this, and it's grown up this high within 2 years, and without maintaining what we actually do, we'd just be wasting our time, I think. And so by doing a phase 2 and following up, I think that's the really best way to go. So what you'll see is one of our street people going through some underbrush and clearing it out and getting it down where hopefully it won't get in the future,
Yeah.
6-8 feet tall.
Right.
Oh, wait. So this coming off the consent calendar, does it go on the other page? We can vote on it tomorrow night or?
I already made note, thank you. So what it does is you will move on the consent agenda tomorrow.
Correct.
And then immediately you'll have a discussion of this. I will tell you,
Comment first. There might be public comment about this.
and so it will immediately follow per council rules immediately after and ahead of public comment.
Okay.
And I will reiterate that the council actually authorized the grant and acceptance of the $250,000 for this intended purpose.
Yeah.
So,
Let's take a
including the
look
council.
at the video before we, and then we'll pull it off the consent calendar for tomorrow. So this would be the piece of equipment that
Yep.
we will own.
So you look how high that stuff is right there. That's
Yeah.
within 2 years, it's grown up that high.
So this is from when you guys were learning to use it.
This was last week.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. Well, it seems like a tool that would last a long time too.
That's really good for brush hog, right?
Yeah.
How much was that?
With. Wait a second. So this was down off the end of actually Mead Street, where it had been cleaned up. And sorry, Mead Avenue. Where it had been cleaned up, and then we didn't do anything down there for 2 years, and it grew up that much, so we were able to actually get it cleaned back up, and I think that's very important to eliminate the fire issues that we're looking at down there.
Yeah.
This particular machine that we're looking at, with a industrial brush cutter, with a grappler is what it's called, so it's basically a bucket that has grapples on it. And there was examples of our guys went in there and they actually got a hold of some stumps and were able to move those out. So it really lifts well. And then it also has a regular bucket on it. So that it's not just, we can actually lift things up and put it in the back of a dump truck as well to clearing as well.
Mhm.
So it's a real good machine that will be able to continue on and do this cleanup in the future.
All right.
And sorry, your question around Counselor Jones, around 115,000 for all of those with the machine and with all the connections. And that gives us, we purchase it as a city, we get some discounts as well on that.
Yes,
So
yes, that's, so that was half of the grant,
ish,
somewhat, yeah,
but
but
Yeah.
that's great, then you have some.
then we've got it for years to come
Oh, yeah.
and we're getting ahead on it and
There's power lines that run back behind that area too,
on which we're at.
behind this area.
Oh,
The pit
instead.
The Pittman Loop down there, yeah, down below, yeah, way down below there is,
If
yeah.
something was to happen down there and you get a fire down there, you have no way to even get down to that area.
It would be a challenge.
Okay.
Mayor, one
Yes,
question, this is really up to you. So our city attorney let me know that no one on the video or public could see the video.
Hmm.
And so if there was a second video, and it's up to you, if there's a way, if you want to show the second video,
Oh, yeah.
it's not long, but I want to make sure that there's sharing so it actually shows on the big screen.
Oh, gotcha.
So
Okay.
that they see it.
No, I have dreams that 10,000 people are watching right now. Well, my dream.
So let's see if he sees it.
I do not. We just see the,
He doesn't see it,
Okay.
so we gotta figure out what does it take Macy to show that?
I'm sort of
That's the
share.
way that I know is to actually share it on there, so I'm not sure why it's not pulling up, because it doesn't say that. I'm
It just
sharing
says you are
screen.
sharing, yeah.
Huh. Well, I'm sorry, Mark, but Feel free to come in person next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
It's pretty crazy how close you.
I'll post this on Facebook.
That was a
I'll
scam.
post it.
Ivy and you didn't hit it.
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
post
not-
it on
not me, but the
Facebook.
person
Okay,
driving it,
person
certainly,
driving,
yes.
you can have disc golf on that side of the highway also,
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah,
really, really good. No more park.
so let's not throw a tantrum.
But-
All right.
Any more questions I can answer real
I
quickly?
think that just item D will be pulled from the consent
Okay.
agenda and we'll have the discussion again tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Great. Madam Mayor, you have these are two sort of procedural, they're budgeted, but because of the amounts that are before the council, the first is the Microsoft Exchange yearly subscription. If we don't have that, then we have no email communication. And then the second is ClearGov subscription services.
Mhm.
ClearGov, if you want to mention it real quick, but basically this is the budget side of it and the forecasting side in order to get where the council wants to go with more transparency of the budget and then also allowing us to be able to forecast where we're going to be, say, in 5 years, the Yodely that I keep mentioning.
Okay,
So any questions about either of those?
not for me.
All right, then you'll have, like I said, the vote for the underbrush, then you'll go public comment. And then the last is the Waterworth, which Ralph brought you, which is the rate study. City administrators report. I have actually a printed copy because I have a very, very, very early meeting tomorrow. So I got those out. So I'll distribute those to you all for city administrators report. Then it'll be committee reports. I suspect there'll be some chatter probably on House Bill 4123, which is the pilot with the city county. And then I don't know about any other committee reports. So back to you.
Okay,
I got a quick one on the budget
You'll-
deal of the.
of the Port
I'll do that.
Urban Renewal. Okay, Councilor Gall will speak on that committee. And so then that takes us to back into our work session agenda. And I don't have anything else, so we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. So have a, and 6:52, adjourn.